Life moves pretty fast, so right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru. Get out there and do something good today. Like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you. Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM. And 104.3 HD3.
The Supreme Court passes. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The justices declining to hear a case brought by Pennsylvania Congressman Mike Kelly that claimed the state's 2019 mail-in ballot law is unconstitutional.
An unsigned order says a request for injunctive relief presented to Justice Alito and referred by him to the full court is denied. The lawsuit aimed to disallow as many as 2.5 million mail-in ballots and block certification of the state's electoral results. State officials, including the governor, have certified the election results, giving President-elect Biden the state's 20 electoral votes. Electors will meet to cast their votes next week.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Now the state of Texas is appealing to the Supreme Court to invalidate the election returns in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan, charging unreliable results in those states effectively disenfranchise Texas voters.
Our job is to make sure that the Constitution's followed and that every vote counts. And in this case, I'm not sure that every vote was counted, not in the right way.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton on Fox's Hannity. Mississippi and Louisiana have joined Texas in that lawsuit. Congress racing to hammer out a coronavirus relief package before adjourning for the year. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
Leaving here without a COVID relief package cannot happen. We have to get that done. I think both sides fully understand that.
McConnell suggesting they set aside the two most contentious issues, liability immunity and aid payments to cities and states. Agree on, but Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer has rejected that.
Senator McConnell has put the jobs of firefighters, ambulance workers, sanitation officers, police officers in jeopardy.
The Trump administration has weighed in again with a $916 billion relief proposal to House Speaker Pelosi. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
As we usher in the holiday season, we want to express our gratitude and appreciation for the lessons that have allowed us to navigate an unprecedented year. We recognize the impact the pandemic has brought to the world and express our condolences to those who have suffered. We are focused on family and what matters most as a community. Our team at Security Title is proud of the work we do. May this holiday season bring your family renewed hope. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from Security Title.
President-elect Biden Tuesday naming the members of his administration who will deal with health issues.
President-elect Biden says he's as proud of this health team as any he's put together, and they will work to slow COVID spread.
Spare not a single effort to get this pandemic under control so we can get back to work, get back to our lives, get back to our loved ones.
Biden also formally requested that Americans in his first 100 days help him accomplish 3 goals.
Masking, vaccinations, opening schools.
Biden says COVID won't be gone in 100 days, but called those goals an easy beginning. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
A meeting among public officials in Boise, Idaho to consider a 4-county mask mandate ending abruptly Tuesday because of what the police called intense protests outside the meeting and at the homes of some of the public officials attending. SpaceX and Tesla founder Elon Musk has moved. He's now a resident of Texas, saying California is taking innovators for granted. Texas also has no state income tax, and SpaceX has a launch site in the state. One of the big social media platforms bracing for a big court challenge.
Facebook is about to be hit with antitrust lawsuits from more than 40 attorneys general around the country, as well as the federal government. That's from the Washington Post, which is reporting those suits allege the tech giant engaged in unlawful anti-competitive tactics to buy or kill off potential social media rivals. The lawsuits are expected to point to Facebook's purchases of WhatsApp and Instagram as examples of a pattern of behavior to take out its competition. The other concern is expected to be that Facebook deprived users of alternatives that would have better protected their privacy. No comment from Facebook yet. In Washington, Jill Nato, Fox News.
And I'm Jack.
Coffee Day. I'm Chelsea Nicholas, and I'm the co-chair for this year's G is for Giving, as well as a proud alumna of the University of Guam. G is for Giving is an annual campaign that kicks off on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving and runs through the end of the year. Known as Giving Tuesday, it is an international day of giving, and this year's theme is Weaving Community. On Guam, we know a little something about weaving community, as we're all intertwined and interconnected in the spirit of Inaf Malik. When one of us thrives, the island thrives. This is why I support G is for Giving's mission to support scholarships, programs, and research. As an alumna, I know how difficult it is to balance going to school and worrying about how you're going to pay for school. In these uncertain times, students are even more at risk because of economic hardship beyond their control. G is for Giving aims to bridge that gap and take away at least some of the burden. For more information on how you can give, visit give.uog.edu or call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 735-2957. Have a happy and safe holiday.
We all need to fight COVID-19, and we need all the weapons we can get to beat it. Your smartphone can be one of the most powerful tools to battle this pandemic. The Guam COVID Alert Exposure Notification app can let you know if you've been exposed to someone who has the virus. Add your phone to the COVID fight by going to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download it from the App Store or Google Play now. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Program starts that way every day because on Tall Tales, a lot of attention is paid to the United States Constitution and all of its amendments, the correct viewpoint of how to interpret the Constitution, politics arising from it, and everything conservative will have a full inning here on Tall Tales. So glad you're with us today. We're going to start the Starship Tall Tales, as usual, with Zemi Ikotny. And as usual, the Daily News is not running a real editorial. They're running some boilerplate from the USA Today editorial board. Which someone at the Daily News editorial board must think we would much rather read than editorials that deal with our local issues. Well, there's only one thing I've got to say about that.
Denied.
Yeah, because that's not the way to do it. Today, this is the title of their bit today, In the Doghouse. Feds crack down on emotional pet scans. Well, again, this is a news item masquerading as an editorial. But what it's talking about is this, up until now, well, turn the clock back probably 30 years. Starting 30 years ago, people could bring service dogs into restaurants, on board airplanes, etc. A service dog, we used to call them once upon a time seeing eye dogs, because people who are what we used to call blind, we can't call them blind anymore, visually impaired people, are often matched with dogs that have special training that can lead a blind person around on a leash. And we look out for them, make sure that they safely get across the street, all these kinds of things. They're service animals. So people who were visually impaired could bring those seeing eye dogs on board airplanes with them. Now, if you're going down to Miami on vacation, you couldn't bring Fido along with you just because he's your family pet and you don't want to be without him. But you could bring a seeing eye dog. Well, somebody got the bright idea that there are some things that are not animals that are not service animals, but are comfort animals. They help people get over some of the emotional speed bumps in life. So the airlines loosened up, and people were bringing pigs on board airplanes. Somebody brought a peacock on board an airplane because it gave them comfort while they were undergoing the travails of travel. Yeah. Well, finally, at the end of the Trump administration, the FAA is saying, no more. You can bring service animals, but we're going to have those things with wings on them are airplanes. They're not zoos. So we're going to knock that stuff off. Well, it's really interesting, but is it an editorial? I don't think so. Then we turn to the Post. And the Post says, where is the plan to keep Guam residents from landing in the streets once pandemic funds end? If this editorial is talking about the government of Guam, you could have put the period after the word plan. We are not very big on planning. As a matter of fact, perhaps if you want to give someone an example of what an oxymoron is, the one that most people grab for is jumbo shrimp, I would present to you for your examination the GovGuam Bureau of Planning as an oxymoron. That's why I always refer to it by the acronym made up of its initial letters, BOSAP. All right, so back to the editorial here. Where is the plan to keep Guam residents from landing in the streets once pandemic funds end? It seems like our local government is waiting either for the sky to fall or for more federal funds to flood in and save pandemic-hit Guamanians like last time. The problem with waiting is there's no guarantee the hope for financial assistance will arrive just in time. There is also no guarantee that even after Donald Trump leaves the White House next month and the Harris-Biden administration will be seated, that the bipartisan pandemic relief package, currently at $908 million, will become law. At this time, the direct cash benefit that was available for some months back isn't even in the legislation. So our elected officials should be telling us, the public, what their what-if scenarios will be. So, in other words, the governor would say, if there's no more federal bucks coming into the island, this is what we're going to do. We're going to establish, I'm just winging it here. Here are some things that occur to me. We're going to establish soup kitchens at every fire station. And we're going to set up distribution systems so that people who haven't got anything to eat can go to the fire station and we'll supply food there. Maybe the mayor's office, something like that. That will be point one in our plan, folks. Point 2, we are going to open Guam Memorial Hospital and all of the public health service clinics to people who come in and execute a declaration saying that they are unable to provide medical care for themselves or their minor dependents. We'll cover that. Point 3, henceforth, we're going to put all the buses for mass transit on the road, and we're not going to charge fares for a while. So we're going to make it easier for people to get from point A to point B. Point 4, I'm asking the legislature to repeal the gasoline tax. The easiest way for us to allow people to keep more money in their pocket is to repeal that gasoline, this kind of thing. That's what I'm thinking. Or if you really want to bite off a big chunk, I have sent a bill to the legislature that would appropriate X amount of money to provide a subsistence check to all those people who meet certain criteria of $300 a week. Now, the other half of that is going to be that when that appropriation passes, there are going to have to be some cuts somewhere else. And I've already mentioned where the cuts could come from. Government employment. We did it before. We did it back in the 27th Guam legislature, where government of Guam employees worked 32-hour weeks. And since they only worked 32-hour weeks, they got paid for 32 hours instead of 40. The legislature cut its salary all the way down to $40,000. Mechanisms were put in place to allow other government officials to reduce their salaries by an equal amount. The gross receipts tax was raised to 6%. The generous COLA payments that had been paid to everybody who'd retired under the old plan were dramatically modified and were subjected to a means test. So a lot of things happened. This was as a result of the big dip in the economy after September 11, 2001. So these are some things that can be done. But it appears that what the current administration, the current legislature want to do, they don't want to invest in fire trucks because there's nothing on fire right now. Now, if there's a fire tomorrow, by gosh, we'll get fire trucks then. Of course, the whole island will burn down in the meantime. So that's what what they're talking about here. Let's see. Our elected officials should already be telling us, the public, what their what-if scenarios will be. But so far, with just 3 weeks before the federal pandemic programs end, we have not heard a thing. So, Jose, it's not what the governor has said.
It's what the governor has not said.
Exactly. Now the conversations have been focused on the Wuhan virus vaccine and the arrival of allocations for Guam. The vaccine might help, but it will not alleviate the immediate needs of financially struggling Guamanians. The vaccines cannot be a distraction to the urgency of the need to come up with a plan for the more immediate and economic crisis households are facing. We like preparing for typhoons. We get into readiness mode, buying batteries for flashlights and gasoline to fill the tank in our vehicles at the slight hint of a literal storm coming our way. We also stock up on drinking water, propane or butane gas, dried and canned goods, items without being told on what we ought to do. We go into readiness overdrive as soon as the National Weather Service Guam Forecast Office tells us a storm is approaching. But for this financial storm that's about to hit us, our government of Guam has not told us of its concerted plan to help people and organize community-wide assistance when the federal pandemic relief package gets stalled in Congress or does not get enacted at all. There must be some plan. If thousands have no more money to spend on rent, gas, and other living expenses, how is Guam going to help, and will it help? If Guamanians are evicted from their homes in mass numbers, and there's no more federal money to pay for a homeless shelter, what's the plan? Or if current homeless shelter residents can no longer stay in the emergency facility because the money has dried up, what's the plan to protect the residents, half of whom are underage children? Underage children. Here comes my blue pencil. Jose, how long has it been since you've seen an overage child?
Maybe they're still in the womb.
Yeah. Well, I've seen some people who were older than, old enough to be adults, but acted like children. Maybe that's what the contrast is. Half of whom are underage children from ending up in the streets. Households must be increasingly worried that the end date for federal assistance looms closer by the end of the month. We sounded the alarm close to more than a month ago. Now there are barely 3 weeks left. For the unemployment assistance, the end date for many is the day after Christmas. Mommy, somebody's at the door. Wait a minute, Tim. Let me see who it is. Thanks, Mom. It's hard for me to get to the door with my crutch. Oh, hello, Mr. Scrooge. Come in. Yeah. GovGuam officials' letter writing to people in D.C. is not a problem-solving plan. It's wishful thinking that the federal government will save the day. GovGuam must say in detail how it's preparing to deal with the crisis. Or is the plan to just keep paying GovGuam workers and leave the private sector workers and small businesses out in the street? Well, it's worked up until now. What's different? Yeah, okay, I'm going to give the Post the blue star for this one. So much for Zemi Ikotny. We turn now to the card. Let's see, that was 234 blue stars for the Post. Today, by the day, is the 268th day that Guam has been held in hostage since the 14th of March. We refer to that as the DTJ count-up. DTJ standing for Drive-Through Jack. Okay, so this is what I got on the card today. The program notes. In Zemi Ikotny yesterday, I revisited Tuesday's Tall Tales, which took on the CCU again for playing hide the ball, once again with a performance evaluation of Kelly Clark. Today, Tall Tales versus Joey is based on an article in today's Post. Joe San Augustine once again shows that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Joe opposed the elimination of non-contributory lifetime pensions for governors, but co-sponsored a bill to micromanage the Attorney General. And then a little knowledge is a dangerous thing theme is demonstrated by Clint as he takes over the Guam Power Authority for the CCU. Tall Tales goes national with a case filed by the state of Texas. Yeah, this is really interesting. On Friday, we revisited Clint and Adrian's cheap shot as seen through the eyes of the former governor. The then Governor Gutierrez's column in the Post is added to the mix. Today, GVB chimes in on that same question. And finally, our local social justice warriors, the white coats for Black Lives Matter, are educated again. Lefties used to champion free speech, used to be champions of free speech. Now they oppose it. And English is a microaggression for the left. So let's start out with Tall Tales versus Joey. And here's an article that ran in today's Post. Attorney says CCU chairman cannot make solo decisions. That's the headline of the article. He may be chairman of the Consolidated Commission on Utilities, but Joey Duenas doesn't have sole power to deny requests for public records under the Freedom of Information Act, said Robert Klitzkie, a former senator and an attorney. Quote, Joey, as a single commissioner, doesn't have the authority to deny a demand for public records served on the CCU. If we want a system where a single person can make arbitrary, capricious, wrong decisions, we don't need 5 commissioners at $1,000 per commissioner per month. We could do it for a lot less than that. Klitzkie has informed the CCU of the alleged violation of the government sunshine law. Klitzkie requested the records of board meetings in which the job evaluation of Guam Waterworks Authority legal counsel Kelly Clark was discussed. The legal counsel's pay went from $115,000 to $140,000 following the CCU's closed-door meeting where the pay raises for top managers and legal counsels were discussed in 2018. The raises were later rescinded because it was deemed illegal to discuss and approve the raises behind closed doors in violation of Guam sunshine laws. Back to Duenas. Duenas rejected the request for records Duenas rejected the request for records based on Guam Law 5 GCA Section 10108. And there's a quote from this guy Klitzkie again. No part of 5 GCA 10108 prohibits disclosure of public records subject to my demand. The law, stated Klitzkie, merely states that it doesn't require disclosure of some records, but doesn't prohibit it either. Quote, thus, if you haven't provided the demanded records, it wasn't because you couldn't. It's because you didn't want to. That's what I wrote to Joey Duenas. And people like that. Oh, we can't give you that. It's a personnel matter. As though they really had a mouthful there. And what they had is a mouthful of mush. Because what they ought to be saying is, we're not going to give you that information because we don't have to. So, take that and stick it in your ear, Mr. Reporter. Yeah. Clark was to repay the illegal raise, but on an installment of $25 per pay period, which will take Clark 7.5 years to pay back the $5,000 that he owes, Klitzkie added. That was in today's Post. Yeah. So I don't think I'm going to let this go. This is just too serious to let it go. And CCU, you got to do the right thing. You can't be public on the public payroll, elected public servants, and use your position to, quote, be nice guys, to give him the benefit of the doubt. Give him another chance. You got to do something. Okay, I talked about Joe San Augustine and separation of powers yesterday, and let me take a short break here, and I'll come back to Joe.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
I guess my talk about oxymorons, like the government of Guam Bureau of Planning, caused Andrew Camacho, the poet laureate of Tall Tales, to grab his pencil, because here's what he offered up today. He says, wait a minute here. I had it just a second ago. Yeah, our Bob is the losingest winner. He always eats breakfast for dinner. He stands when he sits. He works when he quits. He's a righteously saint-like sinner. Yeah. Some oxymorons there, right? Okay. Okay, so as far as Joe San Augustine is concerned, I mentioned a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. He knows that there is such a thing as separation of powers, and he probably figures that he can set himself up as knowledgeable if he can work that phrase into a conversation once in a while. Oh, you know, we can't do that. It's a violation of separation of powers. So there's a bill, Bill 6, that would eliminate the non-contributory lifetime pensions for former governors and lieutenant governors. And San Augustine says, San Augustine voted against placing the bill on the session agenda, said he believes it may infringe on the separation of powers. It's just dumbfounding to think that someone could say that. A legislatively created ex gratia payment obviously can be repealed by a legislature. There's no separation, not even close to a separation of powers dimension. So he thinks that might be a separation of powers, but he is a co-sponsor on Bill 377, which would require the Attorney General to give senators a legal opinion when requested within 10 days or face a $100 fine. Now, that is such a clear violation of the separation of powers. The Attorney General is in the executive branch. The legislature can pass laws, can appropriate money to the executive branch, can pass laws, etc. But to jump in and, in effect, become the supervisor of the Attorney General, saying, no matter how many of this BS requests that we send over here, you got to finish them in 10 days or we're going to charge you $100. Talk about separation of powers. Not to mention the underlying separation of powers dimension. What is the Attorney General doing giving legal advice to another branch? You see the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he's always asking the Attorney General for an opinion, right? Of course not. Of course not. And the legislature is a separate, co-equal branch of the government. It's got its own lawyers. It should not be asking the Attorney General for legal opinions. And the Attorney General should have told the legislature that up front. Don't ask me for legal advice. I'm not your lawyer. You've got your own lawyers. So with Joe thinking that repealing the lifetime ex gratia pension for former governors is a separation of powers, but seeing no problem with fining the Attorney General $100 for not coughing up an opinion in 10 days, it just kind of ties in with what Ray says almost on a daily basis. This is the dumbest legislature he's ever seen. This is a pretty good example right here. Okay, going on the theme of a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Next we have Clint, who is the chairman for the Power Authority, committee chairman. And this is an article that ran in the Daily News. Senators consider whether supporting solar use would lead to higher power costs. Lawmakers debated whether a bill that would help the island move towards cleaner energy. Wait a minute, I think I should be standing up when I say this, right? A bill which would help the island move towards cleaner energy. Isn't it necessary to almost show a religious deference to any of these environmental wacko schemes to end global warming by parking our cars and buying solar vehicles? Senator Joe San Augustine's Bill 219, here's Joe again, right? He's right out there in the forefront, would allow Guam's educational institutions to enter into power purchases or sale leaseback agreements to purchase solar energy from qualified providers. The bill supports the island's effort to move towards cleaner energy, San Augustine said. That's the end of the argument. If it provides cleaner energy, there's nothing more to say. The fact that it might cost you 10 times as much, not important. At issue is how passing the bill will affect the rates for GPA's residential customers. According to testimony from GPA cited by some senators during Monday's session, this bill will increase rates for island residents. And I remember, I think we talked about that here. You know, this whole net metering thing, pretty easy to understand. The Guam Power Authority wanted to encourage people to build their own solar power capabilities by putting photoelectric cells on their roofs, things like that. So for those people who were actually producing more electricity than they were using, they could put that back in the line, and in effect, GPA would buy it back from them. Well, GPA was buying the electricity at the same rate it was charging the customer. I don't know how much that is, but let's just say it's 20 cents a kilowatt hour, right? So GPA is charging the customer 20 cents a kilowatt hour, but it would also buy electricity from the customer for $20, 20 cents a kilowatt hour. You're not going to make much money doing it that way. That thing called the profit, you're not going to make any profit. Unless this is an example of that well-known theory that what you must do is buy high and sell low and make it up in volume. Isn't that how it goes, Jose? Yeah. So the GPA then said, well, what we got to do is we got to remember this, that the cost of generating, it costs money to generate the power, but it also costs money to transport it all over the island. All of those power lines, power poles, transformers, all of the maintenance of those lines, et cetera, is a pretty significant part of the cost. So if we pay the folks that are generating power more than what we would call the avoided cost, we're losing money. And what, in fact, we have is the customers that are not doing net metering subsidizing those that do. Well, this whole thing about putting the solar panels on the roofs of the schools, et cetera, is that phenomenon writ large. And that's what the guys from the Power Authority have told the senators. Now, I have a lot of faith in the folks at the Power Authority and at the Water Authority doing a pretty good job of managing power and water. The fact that they screw up their personnel law, almost to comedic proportions is unfortunate, but it doesn't take away from the fact that that they're pretty good when it comes to their mission, power and water. So I would expect that people in the legislature, unless they're like I am, I don't think anybody in the legislature knows everything about everything like I do, which I don't mind telling you about. That is when I'm not bragging about my humility. Yeah. But it looks like we have that type of expertise in the legislature, and you can tell by the comments that they make. So according to testimony from GPA cited by some senators during Monday's session, this bill will increase rates for island residents. San Augustine said he doesn't believe this will be the case. He doesn't believe it.
At least he didn't say he doesn't feel it will.
Yeah. So St. Augustine said he doesn't believe this. So some guys from the Power Authority came over and told a pack of lies. Obviously, just because St. Augustine doesn't believe them.
He was probably better off saying he felt.
If someone says something that you think doesn't quite work right, you can disagree with that person. And that happens all the time. In fact, Tall Tales thrives on disagreement. It's one thing to say, I hear what you're saying, but I don't agree with what you're saying. It's something else completely different to say, I hear what you're saying, but I don't believe you. Yeah.
Could he have said it a different way? I hear what you're saying. I don't believe you.
St. Augustine said he doesn't believe this will be the case. It's been years since that solar industry has been on Guam. Well, that's pretty persuasive. St. Augustine said, maybe they need to reconsider their power plant. The power plant they're building up here in Dededo, which, they've let out contracts. I don't think they've I think they have broken ground. Maybe they need to reconsider their power plant. I mean, what's one power plant more or less? The voice of reason pipes up, and Senator Therese Chalahi said that while she supports solar power for the island, it shouldn't be at the expense of average residents. We're trying to get solar across the island to be affordable for all as a means of power for everyone on Guam at an affordable rate, she said. I do not want solar if it's going to be more expensive. It's supposed to be less expensive. Residential customers deserve that. Imagine the temerity of a senator thinking in terms of the customers. Then we get to the cleanup part, batting fourth, Senator Clint Rigel, a co-sponsor of the bill, echoed San Augustine's sentiments. I don't buy the argument that they say that this will somehow increase costs. I don't buy it. That's a really great line if you're sitting down at the corner of Joe's Tavern or someplace like that. I don't buy it. We know that the policies that GPA has been doing increase costs. If you use solar energy, you eliminate the volatility of the fuel market that we have no control over. That's true. The only thing with solar energy is that it doesn't work very well at night. So Joe and Clint, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. The bill was eventually moved to the voting file, which probably means it's going to pass. Such as, and then it talks a little bit about some of the other bills, but you know, when you have people like the guys that run the power authority, the folks that run the power authority and the water authority, you have to pay attention to what they say. If they're talking about power and water, if they're talking about the open government law, you can ignore, in fact, you probably must ignore them because they don't know what they're talking about. But that's not, that's not their mission. Their mission is power. And if they come in and testify at a public hearing and say this is going to cost the average ratepayer more, it's not something to be brushed off because I don't buy it. I don't believe it. Nice job, guys. Okay. Next we come up to let's see, Texas versus Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin at the Supreme Court of the United States. There is so much pending litigation going on in various courts in the United States that I have to admit, I can't keep track of it all. I try pretty hard, but I can't keep track of it all. I can tell you some of the basic themes that are the basis of the suits. But we've come up with a real blockbuster here, and that's the state of Texas versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, state of Georgia, state of Michigan, and state of Wisconsin. And those cases turn on some interesting provisions in the United States Constitution. It's an interesting mix of state law and what you call federal law, I call national law. And the interesting provision here is at Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, Section 1, second paragraph, and it reads like this: each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. That's how the electors are chosen. So each state gets at least 3. California gets like 47. And they're chosen by the legislatures of the states. Now, for you constitutional law, Jose's on the phone, so he's not going to be able to do the law and order chime, but it's appropriate. The section that I just read, each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors, is not a power reserved in the states. Now, you've heard me explain on many occasions that we used to have a federal government. We don't anymore. We have a national government. And the reason I say that is in the beginning, there were 13 independent countries that got together and formed a country called the United States of America. And each of those little sovereign countries delegated some of their sovereignty to a central government that we call the federal government. And it was a government of enumerated powers. So that's where the federal government's power comes from. It's a delegated power. Some of the power of those independent states is reserved in the states, like the 9th and 10th Amendment, and the fact that we have a separation of powers. But the section that I just read you is not a reserved power. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. This is a power delegated to the states in the Constitution. Because before there was the United States, there were no electors. None of this existed. So a lot of the litigation that's been going on deals with that very section. And for that reason, the U.S. Supreme Court and the Courts of Appeals have little time to hear what district courts of the United States say about the way states conduct elections, because it's a matter of state law to start with. So many of the challenges are that the state law says ABC, and the court comes along and says, well, yeah, but we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it a different way. Or maybe the state secretary of state says, yeah, well, the law in our state is that all of the absentee ballots must arrive before the election day, but, you know, we've got the pandemic and everything like that. So we're going to accept any ballots up to 10 days after the election. That is a violation of Article 2, Section 1, second paragraph. But because of the fact that that section is a delegated power to the states, it is, in effect, a state exercising a federal power. And therefore, it is something that is cognizable in federal courts. Another thing that happens is that state Supreme Courts come in and rule and say, well, yeah, the deadline is supposed to be on the election day, but we're the state Supreme Court, and we hold that that's a violation of the state constitution, so a week after the election is okay. You can't do that. You cannot do that. So this thing has really come to a head, which an extremely interesting Supreme Court case called State of Texas versus Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Okay, let me take a short break here, and I'm going to come back. I just want to leave you with one thing here before we take this here break, and that is, no matter what you do, don't mess with Texas.
Eivetsem rerivetter COVID-19 returen irisits ekkio ravukora miats job irisin. Igen mi be fi worunga bersawai kose bocer kopon naborong neibum. Inke kai kie gauru kewe sinerevetter kose bocer mutir kekeri uriget eu redarrobuerisuk. Kosabu witi-witiro toriom ka semuriro ibe kopop kekeri ekkederier erinnisire semmun. Kose bocer siboturu ekkio ravukora mekkio irmia pagapang iri semmun. Ato waware firong iriakots puri raibe pot naborong neibum ike pure miwe fiop sawai. Mutir nageo tessi COVID-19 ike pure mi churriever mi semmun. Mutir ne feurie kierennis me pure negoruk pangiri baraban arabas medisin. Siresin fitto siri manielu atsewo office Micronesian Resource Center Mekkio Staser City Joyce Broadcasting. Kiriso Tabur.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app.
Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Yeah, so, Texas. If you've never been to Texas, everybody ought to go to Texas at least once in his life. Because, Texas is two different kinds of states. First of all, it's a state of the union. Second, it's a state of the mind. State of mind. Because everything is bigger and better in Texas. And Texas is big. I've driven across it more than once. And if you're driving from New Mexico and down towards El Paso, you cross the New Mexico border and you see this mileage sign, and it says something like El Paso 31, Beaumont 840. It's so far across that state.
Oh, I thought those were the degrees.
Yeah.
It's very hot in El Paso.
It is. Yeah, and then Texas goes all the way from Brownsville, way down in that little point on the bottom. There are palm trees down there, and it's kind of semi-tropical. Never gets very cold down there. And then you go way up to the north. You got what the Texans call Amarillo. Now, if you say that you're on your way to Amarillo, everybody, hey, that guy ain't from Texas. He don't even know how to speak English.
Amarillo.
Amarillo, yeah. And a Texan will tell you that Amarillo is so far north, them people up there act like Yankees.
Oh, that's north.
Yeah, and they'll tell you why it's so cold up there in Amarillo. Because there ain't nothing between Amarillo and the North Pole except in barbed wire, and that ain't even stretched tight. So here we are, back to Texas. So this case then primarily turns on the section that I keep reading. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. So you got to wonder, why is Texas suing Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin? And why is that case in the Supreme Court? Bob always tells us that a case usually has to start in the district court. And that's true. Cases start in the district court. They proceed from there to a court of appeals. And from a court of appeals, one of the 13 courts of appeals, a petition for certiorari can be filed with the Supreme Court to take the case to the Supreme Court. Same thing with the highest court of any state, a state Supreme Court. There are a couple of other ways to get to the Supreme Court. One is the shadow docket, which I've explained before, and one that I haven't explained yet, and that is the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. And the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, I will grab that part of the Constitution here. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under the Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made, or what shall be made under their authority. All cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies which the United States shall be a party, etc. Controversies between two or more states. So a controversy between two states can invoke the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. And this happens from time to time. Usually it's about water. Yeah, New Mexico sues Texas because Texas is hogging too much of the water in the Rio Grande. A case like that could invoke the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Sometimes tax cases wind up in the Supreme Court that way, and sometimes boundary disputes. This probably is the first time that an election dispute has wound up before the Supreme Court. Now, I've read the whole case. It's 140 pages long. The case, the brief, the application for expedited hearing, and the application for injunctive relief. But it's extremely well done, and some extremely smart people put this thing together. Now, it's a long shot. I'll come back to Texas right after the break here.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Justices decide not to hear one election challenge. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The U.S. Supreme Court declining to hear the challenge to Pennsylvania's election returns by refusing to hear a lawsuit brought by Republican Congressman Mike Kelly. He charged the state accepting mail-in ballots without the approval of state lawmakers was unconstitutional. But there is a new lawsuit filed with the High Court.
Texas suing 4 battleground states over unlawful election results. Their words. Attorney General Ken Paxton asking the Supreme Court to nullify or disregard electoral votes from Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Paxton claiming those states exploited the pandemic to make unlawful changes to their state election laws and procedures.
Fox's chief Supreme Court correspondent, Shannon Bream. President Trump hosting a coronavirus vaccine summit at the White House on Tuesday.
Just 2 days before a Food and Drug Administration Advisory Committee meets to consider the first U.S. application for a COVID-19 vaccine.
This will quickly and dramatically reduce deaths and hospitalizations, and within a short period of time, I think we want to get back to normal. It's a very standard phrase. We want to just get back to normal, get back to where we were.
The president also signing an executive order that would prioritize access for COVID-19 vaccine doses for Americans. It's unclear, however, whether the order would attempt to block drug companies from fulfilling their contracts with other countries.
Fox's John Decker. A chemical plant fire in Bell, West Virginia, south of Charleston, now reported to be under control. But residents within a 2-mile radius of the Chemours plant have been told to continue to shelter in place. They've also been told to turn their heat off so their furnaces do not ingest potential irritants. The explosion reportedly involved chlorinated dry bleach and methanol. No word yet how it happened. State safety investigators on scene. America is listening to Fox News.
As we usher in the holiday season, we want to express our gratitude and appreciation for the lessons that have allowed us to navigate an unprecedented year. We recognize the impact the pandemic has brought to the world and express our condolences to those who have suffered. We are focused on family and what matters most as a community. Our team at Security Title is proud of the work we do. May this holiday season bring your family renewed hope. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from Security Title.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
A court victory for L.A. area restaurants who'd filed suit against a health department order limiting them to carry out only over the coronavirus.
The judge ruling the county did not provide enough scientific evidence to justify an indefinite outdoor dining ban, which will now end on December 16th. The win, however, is just temporary. The state just enacted its strictest stay-at-home order for Southern California since the pandemic started. Bars must close and restaurants are limited to just takeout or pickup. But the Los Angeles County Sheriff argues officials should stop focusing on restricting businesses and instead focus on super spreader events like an underground party over the weekend in a vacant L.A. home where nearly 160 people were arrested.
Fox's Brian Yennis, the state of Washington extending the latest coronavirus restrictions for another 3 weeks.
This is because we remain concerned about COVID activity, and we still do not have a clear picture of the situation following the Thanksgiving weekend.
Governor Jay Inslee, the extended order which prohibits social gatherings with persons outside a resident's household, now runs beyond Christmas. Congressional leaders still at odds over the specifics of a coronavirus relief package as adjournment looms.
There is a $908 billion bill which has gotten some bipartisan support. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is not yet in agreement. Still, he is willing to put his red line, liability protections, on hold for now if Democrats also put aside state and local funding.
We know the new administration is going to be asking for another package. Treasury
Secretary Steven Mnuchin said he offered Speaker Nancy Pelosi a slightly higher package totaling $916 billion. It would include state and local funding as well as robust liability protections. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show, starring Senator Mana Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mana Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today, like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson stream of consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience. Buying a house, apartment, or condo, selling your home or property, or maybe you're renting a house, apartment, or condo on Guam. Whatever your real estate needs are, you can count on the professionals at Horizon Properties to take care of you. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonproperties.com or follow them on Facebook at Horizon Properties Guam. Maria Miller and the professionals at Horizon Properties. All you need to know in real estate. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So that's how this case got to the Supreme Court so fast. It didn't have to start out in the district court, go to the Court of Appeal, et cetera, because Texas was suing 4 other states. It started out in the Supreme Court. I've got a couple of articles here. Oh, and by the way, The position that Texas takes is that the Supreme Court, under the law, does not have to accept its complaint against the 4 states. However, there is some authority that goes the other way, that the Supreme Court has discretion to hear whatever it wants to, and if it doesn't want to, what are you going to do? Go to court and sue them? Yeah. But I got some very late breaking news just before I came down here to do the program that the Supreme Court had added Texas versus the 4 to its docket. So it is on the Supreme Court's docket.
I was just about to ask you that, yeah, because that's what I heard too. But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean they have to hear it, right?
If it's on the docket,
They are going to.
they'll hear it, yeah.
Ooh, okay.
So the rest of the information that we need to find out is that Texas said this has got to be expedited. They suggested a very speedy schedule for the necessary briefing and other things needed before the Supreme Court can decide on the case. And of course, there is a certain time pressure. I suspect everyone involved would like to have this done before the 12th of December when the Electoral College meets. But if it doesn't happen, it kind of doesn't matter, because the only date that's constitutionally provided is January 20. And the Constitution says that the president's term ends at noon. It doesn't say 12 o'clock, by the way.
So January 6th, I heard, is when the Electoral College presents its results.
That's when the Congress counts the results. December 12th is when the Electoral College's members meet in the various state capitals, cast their ballots. Each governor then sends them to the Congress. The Congress meets on the 6th of January, and the vice president, counts the votes, and a single senator and a single member of the House of Representatives can cause it to go into contest. And if it's a contest over the president, then it goes to the House of Representatives for decision. Yeah. But the only date established in the Constitution is January 20, when the term of the president must end. So if we don't get it done by the 12th of December, it doesn't mean it's over. Because the relief that Texas has asked for, they're not saying they're not saying that Donald Trump won their election. All they're saying is that the state elections, because they didn't follow state law, are invalid. Therefore, the state legislatures must decide on how that state's electors will be chosen. So ordinarily, if you're going to challenge an election, you have to allege that if you win, there are enough votes at stake that the result will be different. Not this time. According to the authority that Texas has put forth, if the Supreme Court agrees, yes, the states did not comply with state law when they were conducting their election, it doesn't count. And it would be up to the state legislature to decide what it wanted to do. State legislature could hold another election. State legislature could name the electors itself. And I think the first 3 elections we had, about half the states, the state legislature named the electors. They weren't chosen in an election. And I've mentioned this before. In 1876, the Congress, the legislature of Colorado chose its 3 electors. 1876. So, and there's very good law that nothing can take that power away from the state legislature. Even if the state constitution attempts to deal with it, it would be void because it's a federal, not a state power. And even if the state legislature gives it away, for instance, says we're going to have an election, they can always take it back. The word plenary, P-L-E-N-A-R-Y, is used quite often in describing this power.
How would you respond to somebody who says, well, that's taken away our democracy?
I would give you an answer that probably would not be real popular, and that is this. We never had a democracy. The founders did not want a democracy. They didn't want to be subject to the vicissitudes and the passions of a democracy. So they built this republic where there are filters. So when we are choosing our president, we're not exercising a right of democracy, because really the voters don't choose the president, the states choose the president. And they do it by the means they select their electors. So the only democratic part of the United States as created by the founders was the House of Representatives. People vote directly for their member of Congress. Up until 1912, senators were chosen by state legislators. Presidential electors are chosen by the state legislature. Supreme Court justices are chosen by the president with the advice and consent of the Senate. So we never had a democracy. And of course, that's a complicated answer to a relatively short question. And the system that we set up is a very good system, because systems where there's majoritarian control lead a lot of dissatisfaction. If the vote goes 60-40 on an important issue, obviously you got 40% of the population that are not going to be happy. So the way our system is set up, it tends to bring about more compromise and consensus than a pure majority would. So that's the answer to that question, Jose.
It's the rhetoric out there right now. That's a good answer, though.
Yeah. And of course, even the Supreme Court is going to be, is influenced by that particular thought, because I suspect that every one of them, as they sit down and try to decide this case, especially the Chief Justice, is going to say, I don't want to go down in history as the guy who ruined a presidential election. So it is a long shot, and I'll introduce the term constructional preference. In other words, as judges or justices examine the law, etc., there is a sort of an unspoken preference. As an example, in election law, the unspoken preference is to give light to the choice of the voter. So the unspoken preference, or the constructional preference at the Supreme Court, is that to the greatest extent possible, hard questions should be decided by the popular branch of the government, and that being the Congress, not the Supreme Court. So I've got a couple articles here that lay it out pretty negatively, which means that there must be some hope for the state of Texas. The state of Texas, this is from Guardian, state of Texas aiming to help Donald Trump upend the results of the U.S. election decisively won by Joe Biden. They must think we're awfully stupid. These guys, they must think we're really dumb.
You just fact-check them.
Yeah. The state of Texas aiming to help Donald Trump upend the end of the election decisively won by Joe Biden. Now, we're going to give you an objective write-up of what's going on here. Just the fact that we can't even get through the first sentence being objective should mean nothing to you at all. Okay, before I go plunge into this too deeply, I think I'll I'll take a gander at Another Joe and see what Another Joe wants to tell me this afternoon. What can you tell me about Texas, Another Joe?
Yeah, Bob. Actually, I was curious about.
What about Texas?
Well, Texas is a republic, isn't it?
Yeah, the Republic of Texas annexed the United States in 1847. We thought that we annexed it, but it was the other way around. Go on, Another Joe.
So overall, the new, what is it? In the Declaration of Independence, America is referred to as a new nation or new republic.
Not in I don't think in the Declaration of Independence. I'll take a look though, Another Joe.
Basically, there's no mention of the word democracy in the Constitution.
No.
Would you say?
No. And I've made this point before. You won't find a right to vote in the Constitution. Yeah, you won't be able to find a section that says everybody has a right to vote. Now, I have to qualify that a little bit because you know that the way our Constitution deals with rights, it enumerates negative rights. It doesn't tell you what you can do or what the government's going to do for you. It tells you what the government can't do to you. So I'll give you an example here with the 15th Amendment. The 15th Amendment says, the right of citizens of the United States to vote. Now, you're going to say, yeah, see, it says the right to vote, right? But listen, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So it said, what it basically says is, if there is a right to vote, no state or the United States can abridge that right to vote because of race, color, or previous conditions. And of course, we know what it's about. It's saying that former slaves can vote.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the words, people kick around the word democracy and the right to vote and all these things very freely, but these would primarily be people that don't listen to tall tales, therefore don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, Bob, where would you say it started, or when, rather, would you say that this word democracy became used in actual documents or legal speak? Obviously, they would have said it in, like, conversation. They must have brought it up because our system of government was an adaptation, I think it's fair to say, right, of the Roman system, and elements of which was based on the Greek system of government, right? Adapted. Of course, the Roman Empire had the Senate. I'm not sure.
The Roman Republic had a Senate, and Athens, the city-state of Athens, had a popular democracy. So almost all of the great ideas came from either Rome or Greece, including in fact, democracy is two Greek words: demo meaning people, krasi meaning government by.
Yeah. So it's understood that this would have come up in conversation, but in actual documents and actual legal speak, it's not mentioned officially anywhere in the Constitution, and we're not sure. We have to go back and look at the Declaration of Independence again, if anything is referenced. So this is obviously something that people, as you say, kick around. Obviously, the educated founding fathers would have kicked this around, but they didn't put it. They purposely didn't put it in the document on purpose.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to try to digest what you said and regurgitate it a little bit and spit it back out and see if it sounded right to you. Okay, thanks for your time, Kabab, and I'll just keep listening.
Always a pleasure talking to you, Another Joe. Yeah, so Another Joe is a student here at Tall Tales University. he has matriculated. Okay, so back to the Guardian. The state of Texas aiming to help that idiot Donald Trump upend the results of the U.S. election decisively won by Joe Biden, said on Tuesday it has filed a lawsuit against the states of Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin at the U.S. Supreme Court. The state of Texas said that. Yeah. Isn't that amazing? A great big state said that. At the Supreme Court, calling changes they made to election procedures amid the Wuhan virus pandemic unlawful. The extraordinary and probably long-shot lawsuit announced by the Republican Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, was filed directly with the Supreme Court, as is permitted for certain litigation between the states, which tailgaters understand, of course. The Supreme Court has a 6-3 conservative majority, including 3 justices appointed by Trump. Now, this, of course, means you know how it's going to be decided, right? The lawsuit represents the latest legal effort intended to reverse the Republican president's loss to Democrat candidate Biden in the 3 November election, which had appeared to be running out of steam after dozens of losses by the Trump campaign and its court challenges over the past month. Republican-governed Texas in the lawsuit accused election officials in the 4 states of failing to protect mail-in voting from fraud, thus diminishing the weight of votes cast in states that lawfully abide by the election structure set forth in the Constitution. And that's Texas's theory as to why they have standing, which Tall Tales listeners know is always an important part of any litigation. So the Texas papers say that when states don't comply with that section of Article 1, Section 2, in the way that Texas does, that the voters of Texas's votes are diluted. And that's their theory. Now, it's a reach, but it's logical, but it's a reach. State election officials have said they found no evidence of such fraud. Now, see, there doesn't have to be fraud. And that's the strength of the Texas suit. There doesn't have to be fraud. If Texas's legal theory is correct, all they have to do is show that the elections in those 4 states were not in accordance with state law. And be able to prove that they ignored state law and paid attention to some ribbon clerk instead. Not that there was fraud. But, of course, this is The Guardian. The Guardian goes on to say, state election officials have said they found no evidence of such fraud that would change the results, and local national officials have declared it the most secure election in U.S. history. If this is the most secure, I'd hate to see the unsecure ones. There was an increase in voting by mail in the election due to the pandemic, as many Americans stayed away from polling places to avoid the spread of the Wuhan virus. Texas is asking the Supreme Court to block the Electoral College votes in 4 states, a total of 62 votes, from being counted. Biden has amassed 306 electoral votes, exceeding the necessary 270 compared with the 232 for Trump in the state-by-state Electoral College that determines the election's outcome, while also winning the national popular vote by 7 million votes. Texas is also asking the Supreme Court to delay the 14 December deadline for Electoral College votes to be cast. Okay, well, you can kind of see who the Guardian hopes is going to win here, right? Paul Smith, a professor at Georgetown University's law school, said Texas did not have a legitimate basis to bring the suit. Robert Klitzkie, a famous talk show host in the Western Pacific, has declared that Texas did have a legitimate basis to bring the suit. Yeah, that's great. Paul, oh, he's at Georgetown, so he's got to be right. Huh?
He's in the swamp.
Yeah, he's in the swamp, an academic in Washington, D.C. I wonder what his politics are. Yeah. Trump's campaign and his allies have pursued unsuccessful lawsuits in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and other states, making unfounded claims of widespread election fraud. Judges appointed under Democrat and Republican administrations, including Trump's, have ruled against the president's campaign, often in excoriating tones. Trump lost those 4 states after winning them in 2016. The Supreme Court is not obligated to hear the case and has said in previous decisions that its, quote, original jurisdiction that allows litigation between the states to be filed directly with the 9 justices should be invoked sparingly. That's true. But as I said, Texas maintains the position that the Supreme Court is obligated to hear this case, but it's a moot point now because the Supreme Court has agreed to hear it. Sorry, Paul Smith, you're going to have to go and fess up to your class over there at Georgetown University as soon as they come back from the Black Lives Matter rally. Okay, I got another pretty interesting article here. This is from Scottish blog. It's called "Texas Tries Hail Mary to Block Election Outcome." But yeah, I got a phone call here that I'm going to take first. This is a caller that wants to make his mark, but before we allow him to make his mark, we're going to go to the 7th inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Chili's has a dinner deal you can't miss. Enjoy a tasty appetizer, 2 bottomless Coca-Cola beverages, and 2 mouth-watering entrees, all for just $35. Treat yourself to entree options like our fall-off-the-bone baby back ribs, personal fajita with chicken, or the ultimate bacon burger. Chili's, 2 for $35. Available daily from 3 p.m. to closing for patio dining or takeout. Chili's is located on the 2nd floor of the Tuman Sands Plaza. Call 648-7377 to place your takeout order today. With Chili's, you can still savor the moment at home.
Okay, 7th inning stretch, Wrigley Field. We should have played this game probably in Dallas, and instead of Take Me Out to the Ball Game, something like The Eyes of Texas or Deep in the Heart of Texas for theme music. But here we are. So, Mark, you can make your mark by telling me a little bit about Texas.
Well, I thought the argument. I know what the article said, but I thought the argument was about the fact that it didn't have to do with violating state law. What they were violating was they were enacting laws to change the voting process that was in contradiction to the state's constitution.
Not so, Mark.
Not so? Okay, because that was one of the arguments I heard about Pennsylvania, but
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about the other ones.
As a matter of fact, as I understand the law, even a provision in a state constitution that says that the legislature must choose its electors by drawing straws wouldn't work, because in this one instance, a state constitution cannot overpower the state legislature's ability to choose those electors. So when state officials do something that's not part of state law, that's Texas theory. When state officials, the Secretary of State or the courts or whatever, change deadlines and do all of these things, then they have violated the Constitution. And Texas says because they violated the Constitution, they have diminished the power of the voters in Texas who have done it the way they should, and that what the Supreme Court needs to do is send it back to the states so that the legislatures can make sure that it's done right.
Okay. So the Supreme Court can, in effect, nullify the results of the previous election that didn't follow state law.
That's true. It's exactly right.
Okay, and that's the relief that Texas is asking for.
Exactly.
Well, maybe it's not such a long shot after all.
Well, as I said, I read all of the papers, and it's very logical. It makes sense. It's not something. It's not a flyer or something like that. But I also mentioned that it's a big order to get the Supreme Court to say we're going to throw out an election. And you can bet that there will be a lot of scrambling around to find some legal principle that would allow them to avoid doing that. And I have to mention here that there is a theory called legal realism. We'd like to think that judges go to law school, they spend a lot of time with the books, they examine the facts, they know what the law is, they apply the law to the facts in an absolutely objective fashion, and that if that same case came up again, every judge would decide it the same way. The theory of legal realism suggests that the way judges decide cases is influenced by a lot of almost non-merit factors: where the judge grew up, where he went to school, whether his parents were rich or poor. I'm using the wrong pronoun here. Whether they have a cervix or whether they don't have a cervix. On and on to that respect. And also part of legal realism is that judges will, if there's some way out of it, avoid hard questions sometimes. And finally, that the language that judges write in their decisions, we think, describes the way they made their decision. But in effect, really the language in the decision doesn't tell you how they made it. It only describes the decision that they made. So that's why I think it's a long shot. I think the legal theory, from my viewpoint, is sound, but I think it's a big order to get 5 members of the United States Supreme Court to say, we're going to junk this election. And because we do that, it may turn out differently. And I've been very critical of the Supreme Court, the way they handled Bush versus Gore back in 2000. That is a wound in the flesh of the Supreme Court that will never heal. I mean, people are always going to look back at that. One of my standard lines is to say that, a lot of folks think that George Bush didn't have a majority of the votes back in 2000. Well, he did. He won it 5-4. And what the Supreme Court should have said was, that case came to the Supreme Court in a different posture. They should have said, we don't have jurisdiction to hear this. This kind of dispute is decided by the U.S. Congress. Get out of here. But because they decided that themselves, and I think that the members of this Supreme Court are going to have that at the top of the mind awareness. We don't want to make the same mistake that those yahoos made back in 2000.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Bob. It was great talking to you.
Good talking to you, Mark. You made your mark again. Okay, so I have this article that ran in Scottish blog, which is usually pretty reputable. I won't be able to finally make up my mind, though, until Jonathan Turley writes up this case. He's my favorite legal columnist. One thing I don't think we're going to have to deal with is anything from Jeffrey Toobin on this particular case. Somehow I don't think that Jeffrey Toobin has much credibility anymore. Maybe on Zoom. All right. Texas tries Hail Mary to block election outcome. In a last-ditch effort to forestall the outcome of the 2020 presidential election, Texas sought on Tuesday to file a lawsuit directly in the Supreme Court, attempting to delay the Electoral College vote and prevent 4 states, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, from casting their Electoral College votes for President-elect Joe Biden. I'm still the president-elect, right, Jose?
Yes, you are, and so am I.
Okay. For President-elect Joe, who won the popular vote in each state. This highly unusual use of the court's original jurisdiction, which is most often used to resolve interstate disputes involving, for example, water rights, came just 6 days before each state's electors are required by law to meet and cast their ballots in the Electoral College. The filing by the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton accuses government officials in the 4 states of using Wuhan virus pandemic to make changes to their state's election laws through executive fiat or friendly lawsuits, thereby weakening ballot integrity. The state officials, Paxton writes, flooded their states with absentee ballots and weakened the strongest security measures protecting the integrity of the vote signature verification and witness requirements. As a result, Paxton contends the 2020 election suffered from significant unconstitutional irregularities in those 4 states. For example, treating voters in Democrat areas more favorably than in other areas. When taken together, Paxton asserts these flaws make it impossible to know who legitimately won the 2020 election and threatened to cloud all future elections. There is normally no specific timetable for the court to act in such cases, but Paxton explains that the state will seek expedited consideration of its request. It's true. He also urges the justices to resolve the dispute without additional briefing, telling them that the issues presented in the case involving the outcome of the 2020 presidential election are neither fact-bound nor complex. In other words, you don't have to have a lot of witnesses come in and testify in order to develop a record. Texas is normally represented in the United States by its Solicitor General, Kyle Hawkins, who argued before the court last month in a challenge to the Affordable Care Act's individual mandate. However, Hawkins' name does not appear on the filing. Now, this is kind of a left-handed way of saying, maybe the Texas Solicitor General doesn't go along with this. That's why he doesn't want his name on the papers. Therefore, Texas's case must not be any good. Officials in the states being challenged describe Texas filing as an outlandish stunt with no legal basis. Figures. These continued attacks on our fair and free election system are beyond meritless, beyond reckless, Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro wrote on Twitter, "I feel sorry for Texans that their tax dollars are being wasted on such a genuinely embarrassing lawsuit." Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul wrote, up until this last election, Wisconsin's Attorney General was a Republican. Yeah, when Scott Walker got beat, he lost the governorship and the Attorney General to the Democrats, unfortunately. But the state legislature is still hard Republican. Texas is as likely to challenge the outcome of the Ice Bowl as it is to overcome the will of Wisconsin voters in the 2020 presidential election. Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr, who was recently named the new chair of Republican Attorneys General Association, also brushed off the lawsuit. With all due respect, the Texas Attorney General is constitutionally, legally, and factually wrong about Georgia, and he has bad breath, a spokesman for Carr said. The justices also heard on Tuesday from Pennsylvania in another long-shot suit. I don't need to go into that. We already know about that one. This was written by
Howe?
Howe, yeah, Ann Howe. Yeah.
Amy Howe.
Amy Howe, yeah. So I have a feeling that, you read this stuff and you kind of got a feeling as to what the way they want it to come out, which is unfortunate because it detracts from the persuasiveness of the stuff that they write. You tend to discount it. Well, Amy, I wonder how much Amy gave to Joe Biden's campaign before she wrote this. Okay, so let's see. We got about time for the home stretch here, Jose.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations, check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play or go to thepoint.gu. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Here we are, Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. We're heading down the home stretch of Tall Tales today. So I've got a little bit more on the never-ending story of marijuana and Clint Ridgell and what's the deputy director of land management? What's his name?
Adrian Cruz.
Adrian Cruz, yeah. So these two guys
of agriculture, I think.
I'm sorry, agriculture. Yeah, they see some hypocrisy here, and the tourist industry's not wanting a whole lot of marijuana smoke down in Tumon. So I have an article here from the Daily News. GVB. Now it's been the governor, Mark Beldiga. Now GVB chimes in. Recreational cannabis is expected to bring about 31,000 more tourists to Guam during the first year of legal operation, with visitors spending about $1.3 million on cannabis, according to an economic impact report for the new industry. That's on top of $10 million in projected cannabis spending by Guam residents. However, the Guam Visitors Bureau has taken a stand against allowing cannabis businesses to sell or advertise their products in Tumum, which is the island's primary tourist district. The Cannabis Control Board last month held public hearings on the proposed rules and regs for recreational cannabis. It plans to hold several follow-up meetings starting December 17 to discuss the different issues and suggestions raised during the hearings and to possibly amend the document. Recreational cannabis has been legal on Guam since April 2019, and adults 21 years and older can legally consume it in private, or as the real Joe Cruz would say, in the comfort and privacy of their own homes. Possess it in public and grow it at home with limits on the number of plants that can be grown. But selling it or trading it for anything of value remains illegal under the rules and regulations until the rules or regs are in place and until the government's seed-to-sale tracking system is operating. The law doesn't prohibit cannabis businesses from operating in Tumum, but allows the Cannabis Board to require reasonable restrictions for the operation of a licensed cannabis establishment. As currently written, the rules and regs drafted by the Cannabis Board allow cannabis to be grown and manufactured only in agricultural and industrial zones and to be sold only in commercial and industrial zones. According to Guam law, all land in Tumum Bay has been zoned H resort hotel zone since the late 1970s, unless the property owner decided to opt out and keep his existing zone. So almost all of the property in the Tumum Bay area is zoned H. The proposed rules and regulations also prohibit cannabis businesses from operating within 1,000 feet of a school or areas where youth generally congregate, such as parks, playgrounds, and child care centers. The Guam Visitors Bureau submitted written testimony during the public hearings, stating Guam is being marketed as a family-friendly destination, and it's crucial that the rules and regs for a new cannabis industry do not allow for this intentional, as you were, international image to be doubted. GVB Board Chairman Sonny Atta said adult use cannabis has provided economic benefit in some parts of the country, but Guam's visitors are very different. Some conservative Asian countries that have harsh penalties for cannabis use. From beaches, parks, sidewalks, bus stops, and even hotel rooms, we need to ensure that our visitors and local families are not exposed in any way to unwanted cannabis effects that may disturb their experience of our island destination, Atta said. Cannabis Board member Adrian Cruz, Deputy Director of the Department of Agriculture, last month said he's just not buying. The new phrase, I ain't buying it. Yeah, I don't care what you say, I ain't buying it. He says, I'm just not buying GVB's argument, and noted that the visitor industry has allowed other adult businesses to operate in Tumum, such as strip clubs, bars, and massage parlors. Yeah, which, give up a strong odor, right? No. If Guam is going to have a new facet to its economy, that's not necessarily a bad thing, he said, adding the Cannabis Board is in place to regulate the industry so it's safe and does not turn into the Wild West. Two wrongs don't make a right, Cannabis Board member Teresa Areola said in response to Cruz's comments. Two wrongs don't make a right. I've heard that somewhere else before.
Three lefts make a right.
Three lefts make a right, yeah. Areola, director of the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, also is a member of the GVB board. She said GVB needed to make its position known for the record with respect to the cannabis industry. Former GVB chairman Mark Baldiga, who owns and operates several tourism businesses on island, including the Sandcastle, said he opposes cannabis businesses in Guam. It will result in a significant drop in arrivals over time without question. Anyone who says otherwise doesn't know the consumer. I guess Mark Baldiga, he ain't buying it. Baldiga said the question of cannabis impact on tourism market also raises the issue of whether strip clubs and massage parlors should be prohibited in Tumum. When I chaired GVB in Road Tourism 2020, we had quite a few discussions around this. Most of the board was supportive of moving it out. I remember maybe 7 or 8 years ago, there were a lot of discussions, maybe set it up in Harmon or someplace like that. Yeah. As an alternative would be to locate those types of businesses in a red light district away from the main hotel area. Then Vice Speaker Benjamin Cruz in 2010 introduced a bill that proposed rezoning Tumon and requiring adult entertainment establishments in one designated area. The measure didn't pass. So we got Clint and Adrian Cruz, who they're taking a different position from the Visitors Bureau, former governor, hotel, et cetera, et cetera. But Adrian Cruz doesn't buy it. End of story. Yeah. Another Joe is back on the Ferris wheel wanting to talk about the cannabis industry. Okay, another Joe, what can you tell me about the cannabis industry?
Well, it seems as though that Speaker Barnes and her cohort, Mr. Riddell, they've got cover since they got reelected, so they can do as they wish for the next 2 years, and hopefully in a year from now, when people are campaigning again, memories will be short and they'll have forgotten everything that transpires. But having said that, sorry?
Very possible, another Joe.
Yes. Having said that, I'm not only concerned about the concept that they did not do their market research. Those who support increased numbers of cannabis businesses opening, they're not familiar with the Japanese and Korean and Chinese or all the tourist markets. They haven't done their homework, so to speak. They're insisting that it's going to be their way. But that should be made very interesting. I only wish that they brought this up a year from now so that people won't forget whatever claims they bring up. But as I said earlier, the thing I'm concerned about, or other than the market research, is that the actual product itself is very lucrative, and so eventually you're going to find that it's not going to be only it's not so much a victimless crime anymore, but whatever, something connected to cannabinoid products, and that some people will find a way not to follow the rules, because if it's so lucrative, well, why should you follow the laws? You can only grow it in these areas, but it's so lucrative and it's so convenient to plant it in other areas. And wink, wink, if you look the other way there, fill in the blank, whoever has knowledge of it, we can share in these profits. So, I'm concerned. I think we look at stateside, there's concern of people growing these crops illegally in national parks. So I don't know. I'm guessing that they'll find places that people don't go to here on island very often, and they'll find a way to plant large crops that are lucrative. What do you think about that, Uncle Bob? Does this sound really,
I haven't concealed my my lack of support for this whole marijuana initiative since it began. I don't see that it benefits the island. It might benefit some of the people that want to use it, and I suppose if it becomes, and I have a strong suspicion that it benefits people that are in the business right now, legal or illegal.
and how would they regulate it, Uncle Bob? How would they regulate? Make sure everyone's following the laws, the rules.
Well, one of the things that that I said in my opposition was we have a hard time regulating restaurants. You know, and we read about that all the time, that we're having a hard time regulating restaurants, and we want to take on something like marijuana, take on a drug, a mind-altering drug, with our feeble attempts at regulation. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense from the standpoint of what's good for the island, what's good for the public.
Okay, Bob, could I make a quick point in?
I think we just ran out of time. Another Joe. I hear the music.
Well, I just want to say that I do sympathize with epileptics who have seizures that are painful, and this might help them a little bit. But having said that, we need to really put some serious thought and dialogue. Thank you for your talk about.
Okay, another Joe. Okay, so another episode of Tall Tales comes to a crashing end, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1600.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Another setback. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. To the legal challenges to the presidential election. The state Supreme Court of Nevada has refused to overturn a lower court ruling that denied a Trump campaign request to strike down the state's election results because of fraud. The Nevada GOP, in a statement, saying the state's high court quickly shrugged off compelling evidence and rubber-stamped the fraudulent results without due consideration or even hearing directly from witnesses. The ruling just hours after the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear a challenge to the election results in Pennsylvania. But the state of Texas is now asking the Supreme Court to overturn the election results in 4 other states.
Texas suit lists the states of Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin as defendants. It claims those states made illegal changes to voting procedures during the pandemic that affected the outcome. The allegations include the belief that the battleground states did not protect mail-in voting from fraud. Texas also wants to delay the December 14th electoral college meeting that would make the vote official.
Fox's Gernal Scott. President Trump invoking his America First doctrine on the coronavirus vaccine, signing an executive order Tuesday.
To ensure that American citizens have first priority to receive American vaccines, and then we're going to be working with other countries all over the world, and I think we'll be able to start doing that almost immediately also.
The president said if necessary, he'll invoke the Defense Production Act to compel companies to produce enough doses to supply every American who wants to be inoculated. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says he's offered a $916 billion